You're listening to Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, your go-to gal for all things money. As the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, I'm here to take you on a thrilling ride from the financial chaos to sassy and sexy money. Welcome back, my sassy friend, to another podcast episode of Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach and this podcast. And with me today is Tracy Pleschourt. She's the founder of Self-MadeU and the co-host of the Tracy and Gracie Becoming podcast. Is a certified life coach who helps men and women learn how to think to achieve their goals and overcome the obstacles in their life. I am some reason having a hard time reading today. Most people have spent their life learning what to think only to be tested on their ability to memorize. After spending so much time, energy, and money searching for silver bullets and dead-end solutions, Tracy realized she was trying to solve the wrong problem. Learning to think of yourself as the solution is the secret to life. When you stop thinking of yourself as the problem and start thinking of yourself as the solution, you put your time and effort into solving the real problem, not circumstances, but solving the problem of how you are feeling. Tracy has mastered and now teaches a simple framework necessary to manage your mind and eliminate any obstacle in life, including overeating, overdrinking, time management, career and relationship changes, and professional development. Tracy dedicates her work to ambitious, lifelong learners yearning for solutions and seeking a better way to create the results they desire and deserve. She instills confidence and a call to action that leads to maximum achievement and happiness. Welcome to the podcast, Tracy, and I'm going to dive right in because I absolutely love how you put on there that you work on yourself. And I think all the time, I think society teaches us to look at the current situation as quote unquote the problem and not the whole picture of like what we can do right in ourselves to achieve our goals or work through the issue or however is that. How has that helped you with your, because you've got on here financial solutions as well, but how has that instilled confidence with you with your money mindset?
Oh my gosh. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here. And you did a great job with the bio, even though it's a complete mouthful.
I've butchered some. I've had to okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
thank you.
But I also appreciate like getting right to the root of things. And so how has thinking of myself as the solution become the answer in the context of earning more money, being satisfied with the money that I currently earn, um, and really using that technique to set goals and go after them. It has made all of the difference in the world. I live a completely different life than I lived, say, 10 years ago, even. So I come from a a corporate background where I was at an executive level position. And at the time, I thought that, you know, achieving the highest level of success or the highest title was the goal. I never thought that, you know, tapping into how I was feeling, if there was any sort of satisfaction wrapped up in that title, I never considered that. And I'll tell you why. I, not unlike everybody probably listening, had an education that taught me what to think, like massive action, achieve, 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 set big, ambitious goals and go after it. Even if you have to white knuckle it, willpower your way through it. And I didn't know any better than to just do what I was told, right? We all believe that trusting the authority figures, trusting your elders, trusting your cultural and societal conditions and norms is what you should do.
Mhm.
Nobody ever taught me to question any of that. And so I didn't. And so
Right.
I lot just like a lot of other people followed a script that arguably created, on paper, a pretty decent life. But because I never questioned my own feelings, I never questioned my own thoughts that were often sabotaging what I truly wanted because I never questioned what it is that I actually want. I just kind of fell into this hamster wheel called life.
Mhm.
And one day I realized that my life was not going in the direction that I really wanted. I was overweight. I used alcohol to numb a lot of the feelings like stress and uh, unworthiness. I didn't know how to process those feelings. I didn't know that those feelings were normal. So I would turn to outside solutions like food and alcohol to numb it. Because again, that was what I was taught. I saw that,
Mhm.
that was modeled for me. And I never was taught to process my own feelings or to ask myself, what is it that you really want? And an even better question to ask yourself is why? So here I am, 20 years down the road in this corporate executive position, unhappy. I am actually making the money. I was actually making, a lot of money at that time. I was the breadwinner and I wasn't happy. And isn't that interesting that most people think that earning a lot of money or achieving the highest role possible equates to money, it equates to happiness. And
Right.
that was not true at all for me. And it was because I had never asked that question of what is it that I really want and why.
Yeah, and I
So,
love that. I love that because I tell my clients, and something I did was I created 5 codes to being wealthy, to becoming a wealth queen. And the 5 codes actually stem around um, it's spiritual, mental, physical, energetic, and financial. And you're talking about what I've been talking about with the spiritual is because and I tell everybody, and I say this all the time, it doesn't mean hill beans of crap if you make loads of money if it's not aligned with your desires, your wants, your goals, your core values. Because I worked corporate and I was good at what I did, and like you, I was taught the goal was to grow up that ladder. Now, I was a breadwinner. I wasn't making a good money. I was barely getting by, but I was still taught the goal was to go up that corporate ladder. And I went up that corporate ladder. And for a while, I liked where I started. I liked that medium where I was. And then the more I went up the corporate ladder, the more responsibility that came on me, the less, but the not as much pay. I became, like I was like, do I really? It took me becoming miserable and having migraines and tension headaches and like feeling like I was going to have I was going to have a nervous breakdown for me to look and go, this is not what I want. This
right.
isn't where I want to be. This isn't what I want to do for a living. This isn't where I want my life to go. Excuse me. So I tell people all the time, and I love that you said that we have to ask ourselves where we want to be, who we want to be, and why.
Yeah.
And that's going inward, right? That's spiritual. That's going inward. That's not physical. Yes, taking care of your health, changing your habits, and not and being careful not to change one bad habit for another bad habit, which is a perfect example. Okay, so I'm going to be honest here. Okay, um, I was born with my thumb in my mouth. And so, in order to stop that, even as a teenager, because it was a security, I started putting my hand under a blanket or under a pillow. So, what became my habit now when I go to sleep? My hand goes under my pillow, but it's a habit that's not a bad habit, right?
Right.
Before the sucking the thumb is a bad habit, but so it's finding a habit to stop it. Like there's some people who will quit smoking and then they'll start biting their nails. Biting your nails isn't a really good habit either. So it's finding a one that's not um, a bad habit along with it.
Yeah. It doesn't have
So
net negative like
negative, right, results, right. And, and that's one of the reasons why I do movement through music. And that's one of the reasons why I do my exercising. And I don't even say exercise and I just say move, go move your body, just move your body. And you'll find that the more you move your body, the better you feel.
But I love the fact that you asked. So, my question to you is, what kind of questions did you start asking yourself to change that mindset from where you didn't deserve to be wealthy or deserve to make more money and be happy? Right?
Yeah,
Because we have that correlation that we're supposed to work up the corporate ladder. I had the correlation. It didn't matter if you were happy as long as you were making the money.
right,
And in my
right. And
instance, if I'm not happy, I don't want it.
right. Well, so one of the best questions to ask yourself is, okay, so if that money or if that title or if that person were to magically, quote unquote, appear in my life and now I have it, then what? Now you have to ask yourself, what's next? Because we are taught to live in this very conditional like world. We base our happiness on conditions, on circumstances. And when you start to live your life and create the habit of being happy only because certain circumstances have aligned for you, you set yourself up for major disappointment because there are so many circumstances, almost all of them are outside of our control, right? And so when things are
There's a lot of
aligned,
them outside our control.
right. When the stars are aligned, everything seems great and you're just kind of plugging away. But the minute something goes wrong, you are so unhappy because you actually have no control over the circumstances. You just don't. The only thing you have control over is how you are thinking and how those thoughts make you feel.
Right.
So, Self-Made You, my company, is it's based on teaching people how to think. So, like I said earlier, most of us had this educational experience where we were taught what to think, and then we were tested on our ability to memorize what it was that we were taught, but nobody teaches us how to think. And
Mm.
so that's what I do. I have literally dedicated my life because when you learn how to think, you now retain control. You've lived a life trying to control circumstances that you cannot control, which becomes very frustrating. And you fall down these deep, dark holes. It's like it's this compounded, unnecessary suffering that starts to happen. But when you learn, oh, wait a minute, it's not what I'm supposed to be thinking, it's how I'm supposed to be thinking. So I use a framework and I tell everybody it will result in you trusting yourself. You
Mhm.
start to utilize yourself as the solution to every quote unquote problem, such as a lack of money, such as unhealed relationships, such as being overweight or over drinking, or, I could go on and on and on. This literally has unlimited applications.
Mhm.
And the key is learning how to think about any given circumstance. So I use a framework. The acronym is SELF, so that through practice, through getting the at bats of applying this, you become masterful at it and you start to learn to trust yourself. So that is, like I said, I apply it to money, I apply it to my health, apply it to my relationships, I apply it to my profession, and so on. And it works beautifully. And I have nobody to give the credit to or to give the blame to when something doesn't go right or when something goes magically right. It's always the credit and or the blame, the responsibility lies on me. And that feels really good because then I stay in the driver's seat of my own life. I'm not
Right.
out there pointing the finger and figuring out who to blame next or what to blame next, right? I always have the power to choose to think about any circumstance the way I want to think about it. And the way I'm thinking about it creates the emotion, creates the happiness, creates the sadness, creates the satisfaction. So when you realize that, now you really can make magic happen. It's like you can become the creator, the manifester of absolutely anything, but you have to be taught how to think in order to do that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like those memes that we see on Facebook and TikTok and all those where where it tells us we're focusing on the things that we can't control and we should focus on the things that we can control. We can control our reaction, we can control our emotions, basically ourself. We can't control the circumstances, we can't control other people, and we end up worrying about the circumstances and the other people. And as a tendency, you're right, we go to find blame. And and that's not to say that there's not actual circumstances that you could be in, that's causing you not to have a lot of money. That's not what I'm saying, or and I'm sure that's not what Tracy's saying. But what we're saying is when we take responsibility for ourselves and for how we feel and for how we behave and act in the circumstances, which goes back to being thankful for the money we have, at least to me, having gratitude for being able to pay whatever bill it was you were able to pay. 7 years into doing my business, and I talk about this all the time, I still say thank you when I pump the gas. I'm still saying, I know what it's like to not be able to pay bills every single month. Been there, done that. Don't ever want to be able to have to go back to that, because it's not a good feeling. And I also can, because how you're saying it, I can also look back and see that how I reacted, I wasn't taking control of myself at the time. It was, I was more concentrated on the issue and the circumstances and all the badness, and instead of myself. And that's not to say that it wasn't real, because not being able to pay a bill was. However, I can see where you're saying, because if you're taking care of yourself and you're looking at yourself, that's when you're actually going to start doing actions to make it better and make the best of what currently, so that it moves you from here to your future self.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't do that at first. I did it later. I didn't do it at first. There's a lot of trials and tribulations I apparently kept going through in order to decide, okay, this is enough, and to start doing that. And I think that's where I'm wanting my listeners to realize, okay, I don't have to go through 50 trials and tribulations focused on everything else. If I focus on myself, then I can change. I can make changes within myself. And again, I know it sounds crazy, but say thank you. Be thankful for what you have. I mean, again, being thankful for the money you have, because honestly, money doesn't solve everything. Making more money is not always going to make you happy, especially if it's not aligned with your goals and your desires and yourself. Right. Which is one of the things you're saying, is looking at yourself on those things and then thinking how instead of out there.
Right.
I have a question. One of the things that you talked about was having the ability to just tap into your future self for like advice and reassurance. That what you're wanting and how you're and I'm assuming it's active manifestation that you're talking about and manifesting. Can you go into a little bit about that? Like, that money is not a means of happiness. Money makes the world go round. And what I view with wealth is, we don't have to come from money to create wealth. I believe that all women can create, retain, and expand wealth. And when I say expand, that means expand it for your children, expand it for your life, expand it out into the world to make the world a better place. And that is what the 5 codes that I talked about, that's what brings that happiness, because you're taking care of your spiritual self. It's aligned, your physical, your mental, your energetic, and your financial. So how do you tap into your future self to, what's the words I'm trying to help you, like if you're getting in a tough situation, to be able to move through that in the mindset? Because again, I'm going to repeat myself. I know, like every podcast, it's a work in progress. It is not something we solve overnight. Your mindset's going to be like your exercise routine, your eating habits. It is going to be something you are going to consistently work on for like the rest of your life. It's not something you do once and then boom, it's changed.
Right.
Doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like physical fitness, right? It's not something you do one time and all of a sudden you're physically fit. It's the same is true for mental fitness.
Mhm.
It is an ongoing practice, and you have to understand and ask yourself, like I said, this has unlimited applications. You can even apply it to fitness. Why do I want to be fit? Like, what does fit even mean to me? And
Mhm.
so I think about it mentally, physically, emotionally, metabolically is how I think about it. And there are so many rewards beyond just being able to fit into my clothes or being in the size
Right.
I want to be, right? And so,
Right.
but I have to decide that for myself. It's only going to be meaningful if I slow down and ask myself that question and, oh, by the way, answer the question. So many of us get
Right.
into this habit of checking boxes and being like, yep, I asked myself that question and I asked myself that question, but are you answering the question? That's a
And and
really
and being honest with yourself when you answer it. Like I tell
right.
people all
Yeah.
the time, you don't have to be honest with me if I ask, like anyone else, but you need to be at least honest with yourself when when you're asking those questions to yourself. You need to be honest. You don't tell anybody else what the answer is, and you still need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So to tap into your future self, I think you're going to start to see a pattern here, but everything starts with a decision. So when you're using the self framework, when you're learning to trust yourself, the S is start with a decision.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're deciding who your future self is, you need to decide that. That is only yours to decide. Nobody's going to come and tell you who that person is. And it's a really fun exercise to take yourself through. Like, no doubt my future self exists in 5 minutes, in 5 years, in 25 years. So I want to decide who that person is. And I really encourage people to kind of contextualize that future self. You know, who is she surrounding herself with? What is she doing? You can go through the physical, components of her, but I would spend more time on what does she think? What does she feel? How does she behave? What kind of achievements has she had? What are her aspirations? So, taking yourself through that exercise is really fun. And you are, in fact, deciding who that person is so that you can live from her, so that your
Mhm.
present self can live from her. You're not living to her like most people think. I'm not chasing this goal that I have in the future.
Mhm.
That's how most people think. They think of it like
Right.
as finish line, right?
Mhm.
I want people to decide who that person is and then to step into the shoes of that person and live from that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Instead of living
Yeah.
to them, I want you to live from them. So you're gaining advice, you're gaining wisdom from that person who you have decided exists. And just because you can't see your future self, you have to have a certain amount of faith. But today, you are your future of yesterday.
Right.
Right? Right? You're the future of 10 minutes ago. So we do know that that future self exists. So why not curate it? Like, why not orchestrate who that person is? Because nobody else is going to decide that. And so you start there. Like, who is that person? What is she thinking? What is she feeling? Who does she surround herself by? What are her aspirations? What are her goals? What has she achieved? It's such a fascinating exercise, and then you contextualize that person, and now you can live from her. Gain the wisdom and the advice from
And
her.
then you start making changes from that because you're living from her.
Exactly. And if you don't do that, so Lisa Marie, this is like the biggest aha moment that I've had in my life. If you don't do that, your brain will default to living from your past self.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
most of us contextualize our past self in a very sabotaging way.
Mhm.
We think about all of the shortcomings. We think about the pain. We think about the failures. And guess what? even if we aren't only thinking about that, we aren't thinking about what's possible. We look at what we've actually achieved as that's our capacity. That's what we're capable of. And so guess what we create? The same thing
Exactly that.
over
Exactly.
and
We set a
over and
limit.
over.
Yep. We set a limit. We set a limit, and it's a mindset limit. We set a mindset limit, not realizing it because we're looking at the past and living from the past instead of, like you said, thinking from the future and living from the future. I love that because
Yeah.
that works with your mindset, your money mindset. I mean, that, like you said, it works for everything, and um I like that exercise of, the first, I tell everybody all the time, changing your money management and your money mindset and changing your relationship with money starts with first thing. It's making a decision.
Yeah.
It's making the decision that you're done, that there's got to be something more and you're ready for a change. You have to make that decision. And
Well, and
until
here's
you
another
make that
component of that.
decision, you're not able to actually look at the future to be able to live from there and move forward.
Yeah. And even if you're making the decision of, you know what, I'm done living this way, I think you've already made this point. But I also really like to remind people that, when you're operating in from your future self, or when you're kind of becoming very trusting in yourself, you always have the perspective that every circumstance you can find a gift and an opportunity in any
Mm.
circumstance. I don't care how traumatic it even was, there's still a gift and opportunity. And even if it's you're here today because you went through this very traumatic,
Mhm.
dramatic circumstance, there was a gift and opportunity. You might not be able to see it in the moment, but retrospectively, if you ask yourself, what was the gift and the opportunity? Who did I meet because of that? What kind of triumphs have I had because of that? What kind of skills have I developed because of that? There are a multitude of ways that you can look at any circumstance. I highly recommend always looking at a circumstance as what was the gift and the opportunity, because you come out ahead when you have that perspective. So you might decide, I'm done living that way. But if you really want to set yourself up for
Take
success,
what you can learn from it too. Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely,
decide what the gift
absolutely.
and the opportunity is. So,
Yeah.
so the S is start with a decision. The E is eliminate the self-sabotage. If you are operating from your past self and you are really hearing a lot of fear-based narratives, you have to be able to catch that
Mhm.
and recognize those narratives as self sabotaging narratives. They're there to keep you safe, but most of us are not living in a very dangerous environment. Yet our primitive brain is telling us, you're in danger, you're in danger. And when you react to those thoughts, you sabotage what it is that you most want.
Mhm.
Okay. So I really want to stress the fact that your primitive brain or the amygdala part of your brain is very purposeful. It keeps you breathing without having to think about it. It keeps your heart beating. It also tells you don't walk in front of that speeding bus that's coming your way, right? So it is telling you you could be in danger. Most of the time, we're not in any danger. So my primitive brain tells me to eat the cookie that's sitting on the counter when I walk through the kitchen because it might not be there when I come back. Okay, I'm not in any danger if I don't eat the cookie, but my primitive brain is screaming at me, eat the cookie. It might not be there when you come back. And then I eat it. I have this knee jerk reaction because I believe it. I don't question it. And I eat the cookie and then I pay the price. And typically the price isn't even weight gain, it's the beat down, the shame that I feel because once again, I've blown my diet. That is not because I'm a bad person. It's not because I don't have willpower. It's because I haven't been taught how to think. If
Mhm.
I was taught how to think when I hear that primitive brain narrative, eat the cookie right now, otherwise it might not be there when you come back, I would question that thought. When you hear it, you question it. Is that even true? Am I in any danger? Like, Is that a helpful thought? Right?
Mhm.
So you start with what is it that you want so that you know, I want to lose weight, or I want to earn more money, or I want to, achieve the VP status. You ask yourself, why do I want it? So that those are the decisions you have to start with. Then you eliminate the self-sabotage. What are those narratives that I'm so prone to hearing? Are they judgmental narratives? Are they people-pleasing narratives? Are they avoider narratives? Are they hyperachiever narratives that have you always connecting your self-worth to your achievements? A lot of us Americans fall into that category. We all hear the judge, where we're judging ourselves or we're judging other people. Those are all primitive brain narratives that we teach people how to recognize so that you can question it and you can see it for what it is. It's just a fear based narrative that you are not meant to react from. You're meant to respond. So start with a decision, eliminate the self sabotage simply by just calling it out, recognizing the narratives you're hearing, and then you leverage your strengths like empathy, discovery, innovation, navigate from your values. I think that's a lot of what you were saying, and really connect to your future self, align with your future self. Like, it can be very spiritual. Align to your higher power, whether whatever that might be for you,
Mhm.
nature or God, right? Those are your strengths that you can tap into when you're not listening and believing those fear-based narratives. So
Right.
I teach my clients a little bit of neuroscience, that we all have this 3-pound organ that exists between our ears. If you were to cut it straight down the middle, the left side is your primitive brain. It's the amygdala. The right side is your prefrontal cortex. That's the more extraordinary part of your brain. And that allows you to respond. It also allows you to tap into strengths like empathy, discovery, innovation, creativity. It allows you to navigate from your values and align to your higher sources. Okay. So
Mhm.
we've got the S, we've got the E, we've got the L, leveraging those strengths. And then finally, finish with a decision. And finishing with the decision is simply asking yourself, what's the next step that I can take that is so easy, it's hard not to do? What's the next step I can do that's so easy, it's hard not to do? Notice how when you're breaking it down and you're making it super easy for your future self to take these actions that you're now deciding on right now from your present self state, you're setting yourself up for success. You're not saying, how do I go from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye? No, it's incremental steps. What's the
Mhm.
next step I can do that's so easy it's hard not to do? So that is the SELF framework, and that's how you learn to trust yourself. But it takes practice. You've got to get
Yeah,
the
and
FX.
you're talking about breaking them down into small steps. And because again, what's the next step that's the hardest thing not to do? And that's breaking it down to small steps. Because if we don't break it down into small steps, then we get overwhelmed and then we say, I can't do this. And we start believing the brain again because we didn't break it down to smaller steps. So I love your framework because in a lot of ways I teach that. I just didn't know that's what I was teaching.
Yeah, yeah,
And I work on it. I just didn't know that's how the framework of what it was called. So now it's in my head, and I'm like, oh, I've actually been working on these things, and I've actually taught some of this stuff. Like I didn't know that that's what I was teaching because
yeah.
I was just still going. Look, when we try to make too many changes at one time, we get overwhelmed. Our brains start screaming at us,
Yep.
especially if there's been any type of trauma around anything. So, if there's been this hardship or trauma and our brains just go into and we go into a flight or fight or freeze mode, doing too many things at one time is the last thing you need to do, which is what you're saying with your framework. Is you're saying start with the decision, then you're going to eliminate the self-sabotage, you're going to leverage your strengths. What are those strengths? Then you're going to finish with the decision on what's the very next best step. And then if I'm right, you then repeat it again. What's the
Mhm,
next step? Because then you're breaking it down in small steps. So you're going to eventually get to this bigger goal by
mhm.
doing this process over and over again, which is actually what I've been teaching the whole time. OMG. Like, do you know how happy I am right now that I actually know what that means? Like what I've been teaching, but I didn't know that it was a concept or anything like that. I was just going, this doesn't work when we do too many things. So we need to break it down and we need to start with this.
Yes.
You just made my day.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Yeah, it really does
That
help.
makes me excited because it's a way to say, okay, too much does this. And you have this framework. We can start with this. So that way you don't go into that flight or freeze or those modes, because then you're doing what's the next step that's the hardest not to take, which literally is the next small step. And you just keep repeating. And so I love that concept. Please, before we finish, because that was, I think I could talk about that for a long time because I can just see how it can expand. You have a free offer for the listeners, and I would love for you to explain it to them before we close. It was a free coaching Friday?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So that framework that I just taught your listeners, the SELF, we apply it to absolutely anything. So we have
Everything.
an online 30-minute group coaching session that we conduct every single Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So we get people from all across, the globe attending that session so that they can really better understand how to utilize that framework. So they come with, whatever the problem of the day is, whatever the circumstance might be, and we take them through that framework. And really, we get people that show up every single week very routinely that aren't clients, that are really doing a great job of understanding how much control they actually have over their life, over the circumstances that they have felt for so long completely out of control. So, yes, we invite everybody to come to Free Coaching Friday, and it's 30 minutes. You don't have to be coached. You can just sit back and watch other people being
Watch
coached.
other people. And a lot of times watching other people be coached teaches you a lot. Because, I'm in a mastermind, and a lot of times people are going through a lot of the similar things that you're going through.
Right.
I say this all the time. When it comes to money mindset, money management, money issues, money trauma, you're not alone. I tell people all the time, you can't tell me anything that's going on in your bank account that's going to surprise me. I promise I've been through it all, some of it several times. And I think it's important that, like you said, when you start to realize that you have control over yourself, and when we have control over ourselves, we can actually change our life. We can change the way we're living. We can, and it doesn't. And there's the other thing is too that someone taught me, and this is when I started taking my physical and mental health, started being in charge of my physical and mental health, was small steps compound into the bigger goals. So it's kind of like bank accounts, when the interest compounds, like the student loans, they compound the way we don't like them to. Okay. But the other interest can compound. This is the same way, but in a good way. The small steps compound with each other. And that's how you reach that bigger goal. And when you see it that way and you realize, okay, I have control over that, then anything is limitless. And I truly appreciate you going over that, because I think that's just truly, truly important. And I can see how it will affect our confidence with making more money and changing our mindset and being more in control over our financial future. So I thank you very much for being on the show. I truly appreciate it. I could literally go on and on about that, and I'm not going to. My brain is like, okay, y'all, sorry. My brain is like literally spinning with thoughts and ideas, and I got to rein it back in. Thank you so much for being on the show. And my sassy friend, until next time, remember to stay sassy.
Thanks for joining us this week on Cash and Sass. Check us out on social media and on our website at www.thesassywealthcoach.com, where you can download my free Money Story Start Guide. The website again is www.thesassywealthcoach.com. And as always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And remember, yes, it is possible to have sassy and sexy money. See you next week.